So, my area of expertise was food, so I'm going to talk about the Renaissance food. So, basically, the food you ate during the Renaissance period depended on if you were rich or poor. So, I'm going to start off with the poor, then I'll go to the rich. So, poor. Most of the Renaissance population were peasants, and most of their population and everyone there was basically peasants, except for, I don't know, most of it was just poor. They ate basic food and cheap food, and they usually ate soup or mush, which is oatmeal, and black bread at every meal. So just basic cheap food. Mush was made with oats or wheat cooked in water, so it was oatmeal, and the soup was made up of scraps of vegetables like carrots or eggs. So just food that wasn't good, but they had no choice. Either you eat or you don't. You die if you don't. So I'm gonna talk about meat. So the poor didn't eat that much meat because it was rare and expensive. And another reason why they didn't eat meat is because you needed salt to preserve the meat, and salt was expensive back then. So if you can't just have meat. If you have meat, you need salt. And if you don't have meat, it'll rot and needs to be preserved by salt. And if you lived by the coast, you had access to more fish. So instead of meat, you can get fish, but you needed to be by the coast. So as you can see, they had a very small variety of food choices. So now I'm going to talk about the rich. The rich people got to eat much better foods than the peasants. They were very much into their food and the appearance of their food. They ate soups and oatmeal just like the poor, except their soup contained many expensive spices, and they added things like sugar to make it taste better, like spices and everything. And they ate a lot more meat than peasants, obviously, because they had access to it, and they had access to it, and they had the money to it. They had the money for it. The kind of meat they ate was beef, stag, or pig. They were boiled and then they added juice to them and added rose water for extra flavor. So drinks. They didn't drink much water because it was dirty. And just back then they didn't know how, I guess. And so they just drank wine and beer almost all the time. So feast. They ate big birds like swans or peacocks, and after cooking them, they put the wings back on to decorate it. Dessert was called fruit course, and they ate fruit jellies, nuts, and cheese. They ate with their hands and sometimes with knives. Utensils weren't used. So in conclusion, I'm just going to recap. Rich ate expensive, meaty foods, and the poor ate basic foods like soup, and they did not use utensils and used their hands. If the rich were into their food, and life was good for the rich and not so good for the poor.